Dr. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brad. Good to see you.
So, for those who haven't encountered your work, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what you do and why you do it.
Well, I'm a somatic psychologist, which basically means a body-mind expert. And, I help people really my specialty is trauma resolution because you got to specialize these days. Like everybody's got to have a specialty or else you can't like sell your work and stuff. So, I work with nervous systems directly. I mean, that's the thing about body-mind therapy. You work with the body, you work with the nervous system directly so that, the classical model of psychotherapy is that we're kind of talking heads. We're doing interpretation, we're talking about the family system and making all sorts of meaning about what happened back then and all that stuff. Then the coaches out there, the coaches of the world basically like to frame it like this. Okay, therapists turn towards the history and we turn towards the future as if it were that simple, right? But I mean, there is a lot of that. There is a lot of the kind of looking backwards to interpret, and it ends up being quite disembodied. The thing about somatics and how I work is I work directly with bodies, directly with nervous systems, and I'm a touch therapist. So there's not many of us out there where you have a doctoral level psychologist that touches bodies.
Hey there, if you'd like to support this show and help us continue producing this kind of content, please visit startwithvalues.com. There's a link in the show notes and pre-order my forthcoming book. It's packed full of tools, insights, techniques to help you live a values-aligned life, to reduce stress, increase fulfillment, and it makes a great gift. So perhaps it's something you could share with someone else who you care about. That would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you again and all the best. Let's get back to the episode.
So I touch bodies in clinical practice. I was a craniosacral therapist for many years, taught in New Zealand, taught in Australia, and so I touch people during the psychotherapeutic uh, relationship and the clinical encounter to relieve trauma and to, just support people in living a life that they love.
What does somatics mean for anyone out there who's heard the term but maybe doesn't quite understand it?
Yeah, soma just means body. It sounds much more complicated than it should be, right? It should just be body psychotherapy, which a lot of people call it that. I guess somatic sounds fancier or something like that, or more important. I don't know, but it just means body. So
Okay.
somatic psychology is a psychology of the body. It's a
Mm.
where we're really looking at that connection between mind and body as if and they're not separate, right? They're continuous. They're always in relationship. They're always affecting each other. And that's what it means. Body.
Got it. Perfect. Now, when you say touching people, like, is this massage? Is it obviously craniosacral is a specific technique? What kind of techniques do you use?
Yeah. So most of the time it's stillness touch. I was a craniosacral therapist and craniosacral teacher for many years. Um, but I found I ended up kind of getting bored and kind of seeing the limitations of the model. So I like calling it just stillness touch, where there's no movement like a massage. It's just that where the hand goes on the body and there's no movement. It's very stabilizing, really stabilizing for most people to just have a not because you know we're constantly being flooded by information, and opinions, the ocean of opinions and
Mm.
information,
Yeah.
constantly flooding us. And there's enough to process, right? So why add more? That's why I like stillness touch. So like, why add more to the nervous system when it's already inundated with so much? We don't need to add more. Hey, let's see if we can subtract. Let's see if we can. It's almost the way to look at it, Brad, is that stillness touch is like putting on sound canceling headphones. It just kind of reduces the noise in the nervous system, where the practitioner just doesn't add that much. It just, is just there and it's a stabilizing element. And I use that most of the, especially in trauma resolution work. But when I'm working over time with people and doing a little bit more of this psychological stuff where we encounter defense patterns, what's called in my field character armoring. And
Mhm.
character armoring is like when a person has a deep psychological defense against, for example, being angry. And so they become passive aggressive because they repress the anger and it comes out sideways. That would be an example of character armoring, and it shows up in the body a lot of the times here, in the jaw, because they bite back their anger and then bite back their anger, and then they say, why are there so many angry people in my life, or something like that, not having any idea that they're constantly distributing aggression, right? That's the passive aggressive person. Now, with character armoring like that, often a different touch approach is used. And so this would be the myofascial technique. So I don't know if you've heard of rolfing or myofascial release work.
I have heard of
This
that.
is work that's directly with the connective tissue of the body. It's different also than massage, but it's an active approach. Stillness touch is passive. It's sound. The putting on the sound cancelers. Myofascial release is really getting in there, and because the character armoring gets deep into the posture of the body. I laugh with my students. I ask them, hey, have you ever seen anybody with resting disgust face? Somebody that just kind of walks around with this, like they've just smelled rotten eggs or something like that. You,
Mm,
you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking
definitely.
about? Just
Yeah.
like they look at you and they're just like, and it's just not fun to be around them because they have it's like permanently etched into their face, right? Well, you
Mm,
actually have to, if a person like that wants to change, what I find as a somatic psychologist is you actually have to get in there and plow the structures. You have to like get in there into the connective tissue and actually introduce a mechanical force to
interesting.
move things out of that crystallized pattern. So I use
Mm,
the myofascial technique as well, and I train students to do that as well.
that's so interesting. And because a lot of people don't realize, what you practice, you get really good at. The more you practice disgust or worry or fear or whatever it is, well, your body is posturally changing. You're tensing your muscles, and basically that's what you become because you've practiced it so much. So to unravel that,
Yeah.
you need to start with the body, not with you know mindset.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're practicing being uptight, all of the energy and information will just kind of be up here, right? So then we got to kind of bring things down. Got to,
Yeah.
loosen downwards. If you're uptight, you got to loosen downwards.
Mm. What about for someone who's experiencing anxiety? How does that manifest in the body?
Differently for different people. I
Okay.
mean, so some people, you have anxiety is really complex. In fact, there's some people that say, like, the great masters in psychological assessment, like Theodore Milan and some of these big data driven theoreticians and stuff like that, they'll say, these deeply informed folks, they'll say anxiety is the phenomenon that's common to all mental health disorders. So, like, that's a big statement coming from a bigwig like that. Like,
Mm.
so anxiety is everywhere, is basically what he's saying. It just shows up in different shapes and forms. It can show up in somebody that is very, very anxious about an other, about, attachment relationship.
Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So, all the best.
If you think about it, um, somebody that's really attached to others in their whole life and their anxiety is organized around relationships, think about what, like, let's put our bodies into the shape of that. Like if you're constant, like my head goes forward, right? And I'm kind of my arms would kind of want to reach like that.
Hmm.
And I'd want to rescue people if they're in distress. I'd get really, really anxious if you started to cry and fall apart right now. And I was organized anxiously in this way. I would kind of like, well, Brad, like
Yeah,
I'd come forward, right? That's the whole point. So that's just an example of how that can get, come into the body. That psychological orientation to another, which is anxious, right? Anxious attachment. And the arms actually have too much tension in them. And it's as if the body is uprooting and trying to perpetually go towards other people. And you see that in the form of the body, in the neck, and in the eyes and the arms. And often the legs don't, there's a sense that the legs aren't really on the ground or the earth. So that's just one example. We could go
of
a
course.
lot of different areas for that.
And do you think that the touch and the stability that that provides, as you described, especially that stillness touch, it's humans obviously need connection. I mean, physical contact is so important for us. And is it a case of not many people are receiving that kind of unconditional, just support? Someone, that sense of someone being there who cares. Is that one of the reasons why this is so powerful?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of what we're doing, in like social media, common everyday
Mm,
discourse is basically just trying to share our opinions to get other people to agree with us, right?
mm,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's this constant attempt in humanity to kind of make people a version of ourselves and how we think and act and stuff like that. And it's a type of coercion, a
mm,
subtle coercion that we're always it coerce other people into our opinions. It's happening all the time, right, Brad? It's
100%.
like we're
Mm,
constantly trying to kind of convince and coerce people into a different way of thinking about it. And then in therapy, we have these pretty words, or in coaching, we have these pretty words like reframing. Oh, can we just reframe that? And it's like, okay, another way, if we think about the dark side of that, it's just like, really, I just want you to see it a different way, how I see it, which I think is
mm,
better. So, like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just it can be so constant. So, to just kind of sit back and not, and just give sound cancelers. It's like, we really need that. Just like,
Mm,
and then if you put the contact into there and that type of attitude or orientation um, comes into the hands, it's very different than trying to do something with the body to shape it into where the clinician thinks it should be based on their diagnostic system. So bodies really respond well to this, right? Just like, that just feels nice to have somebody not kind of
mm,
coming into my tissue and coming into my psyche to try to do something. And then there is some science that does show that, like caregivers and babies, for example, there are specific neural receptors throughout the body, like neuron receptors that process only slow touch information, slow touch.
mm,
Okay, they're called C tactile fibers. And this is, these are the fibers that are lit up at the earliest stages of development, earliest times of development. And they feel good to the baby. They help the baby to regulate their experience. It's the same pace that a caress would be. I'm not saying that I caress clients. Nope, I don't do that. But the point is the pacing of it.
mm,
It's very, very slow wave stuff. And all this fast wave stuff where, we're trying to just propagate information or whatever, it doesn't soothe as much as this really slow stuff can do. And so we're connecting with that when we're doing um stillness touch. I mean, have you ever noticed, like, when, let's say, you started to cry or something like that, that the rescuers, have you ever noticed that the rescuers out there will kind of hug you and their thumb will kind of go like this? You ever notice that? It's kind of like rescuing behavior. Where
Yeah, yeah,
somebody
yeah,
touches you and you can feel that there's an anxious touch there, and their thumb
yeah,
kind of goes like that, or
yeah.
they kind of put you on their put their hand on your back and do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not stabilizing. It's
Mm.
actually not stabilizing. What's stabilizing is when the hand goes from like this to boom. Now we're dropping in together. Now we're actually stabilizing. That person stops trying to rescue me or move their anxiety into my body. And now we're actually getting somewhere, right?
Yes. Yeah, you wouldn't do that. I mean, we know intrinsically if you want to soothe a dog, which is often you soothing yourself in a way, it's like slow touch. Like you put your hand, rest your hand on that dog, or like slowly touch it, and you wouldn't get to your your dog and do those things, or to a cat. I mean, it's not going to like it very much, right? And the same with a baby. You don't sit there with a newborn and do like these it's very
Yeah.
soft touch, and at some point, I suppose, as we grow up, we think it's no longer necessary. We don't need this anymore, and we do.
We totally do. And, we need a dynamic, responsive relationship. It's like dogs also love to play. You know what I mean? They
Mm.
love it when you come in and they even like it when you aggressively play with them, as long as you do it sensitively and you don't overpower them or hurt them, right?
Yes, yeah, they do love
They
it.
love to play it with that rigor, and so it's not just about, and this is what I teach neuroscience students. It's like, listen, it's not just about soothing everything, which is really important. We need to learn to do that together more. It's about playing as well,
Mm,
right? In a way that we would come and meet a dog, and, because a dog doesn't mind as long as you're doing it sensitively and you're in relationship with it and it knows that you're playing. You kind of do a play bid, right? It's called a play bid in the science. And for a dog, that means lift up the tail. Yeah, and put its head down, right? That's a
yeah.
play bid. That's a message to the other dogs, that, hey, let's do this play thing. It
Mhm.
often starts wagging, and we need to learn how to do that, right? But it's like, do you have that in New Zealand? Wag, bark less, wag more, something.
I haven't
Yeah,
heard
we
that
have that
before.
in America. It's a bumper sticker. It's like a
Yeah.
meme or whatever.
Yeah.
Bark less, wag more, and
Hmm.
basically what that's saying is, come on, people, let's play more.
Wow.
It's so
Absolutely.
needed. It's so simple. It's like children naturally do it, dogs do it.
Yeah.
Why have we become so serious and opinionated? Not saying I'm not opinionated, but
Yeah.
but I just love to play, right?
Well, exactly. And we can all have different beliefs. I mean, in the past, this was just acknowledged. We all believe different things, but we don't have to fight about it. We've still got some common denominators, some values, or, at the end of the day, we're people, and you can have a laugh with pretty much everyone. And you're right, people have become way too serious. And it's so lightening when someone comes in and just smiles and has a joke. And I think humor is so important right now in the world, just to find that common humanity, laughing at ourselves because we have become way too serious. Mm.
Yeah, like, activists out there in the world are doing amazing work that is, trying to hold up a mirror to the injustices which are real.
Yeah.
There's horrible injustices, there's horrible dehumanization. But it's like, so you meet war with rigidity and and it ends up just being populating more hatred in many ways.
Yeah.
I on my podcast I talked with a professional clown trainer who was actually my trainer, and
Mm.
he was talking about this activist group that is basically a clown group, and these are people that go into war torn countries, and what they try to hold up a mirror for the absurdity of it, and try to use absurdity to get people to lighten up and just be like, there's just hatred multiplying with hatred, and it's just this never ending loop. um,
Mhm.
what a clown can do is what a wolf pup can do, which is to say that they actually know how to play with aggression rather than aggression playing them, which is essentially in humanity the difference between war and peace. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're either, so it's like we don't get to choose whether we got aggression or not. We got it. It comes in with the hardware. Like there's aggression in the self. There's aggression in the body. It's in the core of the brain. So then the only possibility we got, if we want to be realistic to what our organism is and does, is can we find a way to express aggression creatively? Okay. And the clown is an answer to that. And just watching wolf pups is an answer to that. Like, like we can find a way to do aggression playfully without hatred, or even, I mean, this is much more ambitious, but the clown can do this. A sophisticated clown can do this, is to play with hatred as a given too. It's like, okay, all right, hatred is a given. Like, okay, so if it's a given, maybe we can just stop fighting it and figure out a way to hold it without some pompous claim to being innocent. You know what I mean? And then we can sort of play with that and not try to convince ourselves that I don't have it, but everybody else does, or this type of person does, or that type of person does. Well, it's like, no, okay, that's kind of an ambitious thing, but psychologists have talked about this for quite some time, that with every love, you have some hate.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
that hate just seems to be in the soup. So rather than trying to fight it and convince yourself that you don't have it at all, it's only those other people over there. Well, is there a way that we can clown around with it a bit? That's an interesting idea, right? Clowning around with hate.
Mhm.
It's like, whoa, that's paradoxical. That's edgy. That's difficult. Like, how would we do that?
100%. I've never really thought about the power of the clown. And does someone need to? I mean, can you unpack the concept of a clown? Does it? It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's dressed up. Although I suppose that helps you understand that they're playing a role and they're not attacking you. Whereas you're also giving them permission to show you the funny side of yourself and amplify that hate and all of that kind of stuff in a safe way. Can we all become clowns to some degree?
Absolutely, 100%. Well, another way of saying it is we're already clowns.
Yeah, yeah.
And we
It's
just
so
need to
true.
become conscious of it and do it better in a way that we actually get, in a way that it's actually funny.
Mm,
Or,
mm,
the clown function is an ancient function. The trickster archetype traces back to a lot of the world mythologies. I mean, you just like right there in River City for you, and Tauranga. You're in
mm.
Tauranga.
That's right.
I'm saying it like a American, right? How can you say it?
So here, the proper way of saying it is Tauranga.
Tauranga,
Mm,
Tauranga. Yeah, yeah,
mm.
yeah. I remember Te Aroha Te Whakapono Te
Beautiful.
Rangi Marie Tato Tato E. Did I get it right?
You did. Very good.
Yes. So, I mean, so it's Maui, right? Maui, the
Hmm.
trickster figure
Yes.
of the Maori cosmology, right? You
Mm-hmm.
got this trickster god who's, just up to playing tricks, and in in playing tricks, he's a creation deity. He's part of making a world.
Mm.
And you see this, cross culturally. You see a
Yeah.
trickster figure that has everything to do with making worlds through trickery. And what
Yes.
do? They overturn the status quo. They are anti-structural figures. Now, it's a technical term for, status quo hierarchies. That's structural. It's a structural thing. Structural power, hierarchies, the way that things should and shouldn't be done. These are structures,
Mm.
right? So the trickster is an anti-structure thing. It looks at the social rules, like you and I. There's a social rule. There's social rules behind doing a podcast interview, right? It's kind of an implicit rule. You kind of it's implicit. It'd be interesting to try to articulate it too. Like, what are the rules and the structure? It's like we got these frames, and we probably shouldn't, pick our nose, like and there's all these rules that the clown holds up a mirror, the trickster holds up the mirror and then transgresses them. And a lot
Mm.
of people think it's absolutely hilarious because but it's also very freeing.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I can breathe a little bit better because this is where the somatics comes online. Because structures can compress and make rigid
Mm-hmm.
over time. They really do. They can just, and then so the clown is an expansive figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are, and this happens like dad jokes is a trickster thing. Like, are you a dad,
I
Brad?
am. Yeah.
Yeah. How old are your little ones?
My daughter is 10 and she accuses me of dad jokes quite frequently.
Well, that's our trickster function. It's like, well known. It's like, dad. Uh, my teenager can actually feel me winding up for one,
I love it.
and she can like kind of go, "You're winding up for one, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah," but she'll still let me do it, which is great, and we can have a laugh with it.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I think we really are clowns, all of us, and if we can
Mm.
just do it a little bit better, let loose a little bit more. I mean, that's what the trickster teaches us, like let
Yeah.
loose. You know, when it comes to somatic psychology, you can come out of your rigidities, and explore and be expansive. And otherwise, it's hard to breathe fully.
I love that. I love that. Now, I'm interested in trauma and wild animals. I wrote an article about this on my website some time ago. It seems, according to the research, that wild animals don't experience trauma because they've got these methods for resetting the body after a traumatic event. So they might shake, they might pant, they might go and drink water or whatever it is. Why do humans hold on to trauma from your perspective?
Yeah, because civilization is schizophrenic in the sense that it's tried to convince us in various ways that we're not animals.
Mm,
Okay,
interesting.
and so you're right. There's a natural animal response to when a traumatic event happens in our animal bodies underneath the umbrella of this complex meat matrix of 86 billion neurons, right? That makes all these complex meanings about how we're not animals, you know, in various ways.
Mhm.
And then, but you have this surge of intensity. So, traumatic event, let's imagine that you have a predator animal. Give me a predator animal. First one that comes to mind.
Oh, interestingly, an eagle. I'm not sure why.
An eagle. Okay.
Normally, I would say a
Eagle.
lion, but
No. This is no. Let's go with eagle. I like
yeah,
eagle. So, the eagle is actually the most primitive enemy of the human. Did you
really,
know this?
no.
Yeah, because we used to be like in our earliest times out of the trees in Africa, when we were first kind of doing bipedal stuff on 2 feet out of the trees. We were smaller than 3 feet tall. Our ancestors, ancient ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And so the most common way that we would be taken down is from these enormous eagles in Africa.
Mm.
Okay. So like we're deeply, I mean, you kind of named our primordial enemy because
Interesting.
we're deeply attuned. If you get out of those trees, an eagle is going to want to come down and pick that brain out. So we have thousands of skulls in archaeology with little markings on the orbits of the eyes, and that's from eagles pecking out our brains, our ancestors' brains.
Whoa.
It's
Mm,
wild, eh?
that
So
is.
okay, so like so eagle, all right, comes down, and let's say that it gets one of our 3-foot ancestors, and it starts to take it down. Okay, this is before we have complex meaning making, right?
Yeah.
Complex symbolization. Okay, and somebody else, we still have kinship lines there. So somebody comes in and gets the eagle out of the way. The animal, what it does is it goes through a sequence of discharge. So, like when an intense trauma happens, we'll go into a collapse response. Okay. It's the cat and mouse thing
Yeah.
where the mouse gets floppy, and just kind of goes ragdoll style. When that happens, there's all sorts of powerful chemical responses in the body, and we go ragdoll. Okay. And we essentially pass out and get high on heroin. Okay. So the areas deep in the brain, spin out opioids, powerful pain relieving molecules. And essentially, it's nature's compassion. So if that eagle comes down, starts taking my brain is going to be pecked out. Oh shit. Then the opioids are going to be circulating so that I can then, kind of pass out on a wave of heroin or whatever. It's like
Mm-hmm.
nature's compassion. Okay. But if somebody comes in and saves me from the eagle, then what happens is I'm going to be totally woozy. I'm not going to be conscious because I've collapsed. I'm basically in a drug state. But what happens in vivo, like actually in nature, is that when safety is there, the animal will go into a boot up response. Okay, and it's a huge surge of serotonin that goes through a particular region of the core of the brain that boom boots up the system, and then the system starts to kind of get into this weird kind of shaky dischargey thing that looks insane. It looks crazy, Brad. Okay, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but it looks crazy. Right? It's all like this, and then eventually they stabilize, and boom, they're right back on track. They go back to the trees, or maybe they start playing with somebody else or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that, and this is my hypothesis, and it's not just a hypothesis, it shows up clinically pretty much every day in clinical trauma treatment, is that something about humanity and our obsession to convince ourselves that we're not animals has suppressed this natural, crazy looking thing. The natural animal boot up and shake off the powerful molecules and the drugs and all of that so that the nervous system can reset itself, right? So now we're just in, like, we have a podcast interview, it can be stressful or whatever. Maybe if I have a big trauma history or whatever, I'm going to on some level be traumatized, and then after the call my body will want to, or now or whatever, my body will want to go, like to shake it off. But because it's become so socially unacceptable, those intensities,
Mm-hmm.
they just get suppressed and suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. And it's all because of where we started in the first place with this answer to the question, which is that we're schizophrenic in relationship to the animal body as a general principle.
It's really interesting. One of my mentors, colleagues, I came into his house once, and he said to me, "Try this," and he was beating his chest like a male baboon, and he said, "Try it." And I was like, "This was a business meeting." Okay, not really? He goes, try it. It feels really good. And then he started going like, whoop, 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 whoop. Honestly, it felt amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
any trauma from the previous day's bad news or whatever, it felt amazing. So much so that sometimes in the morning I wake up and do a little bit of that running around the garden, and it feels incredible. It's
Yeah.
just getting back into your body, right?
Totally. It's just
Mm.
a simple thing, and it's like simple things like this, even when they get into the digital world and the virtual world, they get kind of virtualized and uploaded
Yeah.
into a meme structure where it's like then this thing ends up not being animal too. It becomes a meme.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So some people might be doing it. You know what I mean? They might be doing it, but like it can still be disembodied. That's the complexity of our
Mm,
times. It's
that's
so
interesting.
weird.
Yes. It becomes just a performance rather than actually doing the thing.
For sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's so many layers against actually doing the animal intensity now, like actually going there. It's like, so,
Yes.
oh, we're so civilized and moral. No, we're not. Show me the evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So someone has experienced a traumatic event. Usually it's acute most of the time. I guess sometimes it could be repetitive depending on what it is.
Yeah.
They want to overcome this because they don't like the fact that it's starting to become repetitive in their thoughts. It's detracting from their overall life experience. What do you recommend? So someone comes to you. How do you help them on that journey?
So I'll definitely answer that. I did want to throw in there
Hmm.
that animals, other animals, um, can also get traumatized as long and usually by humans.
Yes. Mm.
That's an exception because if you trap an animal and you repetitive trap it in particular, subjugate.
Hmm.
Humans have a penchant for
Mm.
subjugation and trapping. You and you constantly hurt it such that it has no power to recharge and do the coming back to discharge and come back to normal, then it'll start to look like what happens with humans, where it becomes a actual traumatic life where
Mm.
it's just everything is danger. You can see it sometimes in dogs where they just,
Yeah.
they just live like this, and it's because they've been conditioned with a constant exposure to not feeling safe, constant exposure to not feeling safe, not feeling safe, feeling trapped, can't get out of here, feeling trapped. But the other side of it is neglect with humans,
Mm.
um,
Mhm.
where neglect is extraordinarily traumatic too, just in a different way, where it's a type of not feeling safe, but it's different than being actively intruded upon and actively subjugated and actively hurt. It's
Mhm.
that nobody is home to provide a play point, a body to play with, a body to
Mhm.
a face to light up when it sees you. Like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
so happy to see you, Brad. Like, yeah,
Yes.
so that none of that stimulus comes in. So trauma over time is almost always relational trauma.
Interesting.
And I like to say that it's like you can't really meditate yourself out of relational trauma. You know what I mean? You can get a good foundation with meditation to self-soothe and things of that nature. But the general principle is that relational trauma needs to be addressed relationally in therapy because there's experiences of safety with another and
Mm.
experiences of playfulness and well-paced, sensitive stimulation, like play and stuff like that, that just weren't received in relationships. So especially people that have a neglect history, forget about it, about meditating yourself into wholeness. Like, maybe if it's extremely advanced
Mm.
meditation where eventually, but that's often with a mentor and teacher anyways, right? Which is
Yeah.
relational.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, how do I work with that? I use EMDR, but I've also, developed my own method for working with trauma where, there has to be some element of re-experiencing. So something bad happens.
Mm.
And memory research holds that, if in order to change a memory, memories are very changeable actually, you have to access it. Okay. And if you access it, if it's a true trauma memory, it's going to flip a person out,
Mm.
you know? But you kind of have to get in there in a sophisticated way that's slow and well paced. And in my books, it needs to be neuroscientifically informed. No, it doesn't need to be. No, no.
Mm.
Neuroscientific informed approaches, okay, are my path because, I mean, not just my path. I'm a neuroscience professor. So it's just, whether it's neuroscience or an indigenous practice, it's the sensitivity and the pacing that matters the most. So
Ah.
being able to approach that memory slowly, sometimes with the support of a hand that's a stillness touch that helps a person to stabilize so that they can go in and re-experience, okay, but with something new. What's that something new? That's me. That's a stabilizing hand or presence with a slow pace of talking. Um, and so there's a whole skill set that's required to navigate a trauma scene, because you kind of need to go back and bring something new into the equation. Um, and it's a fairly complicated skill set. It requires some neurological training and some empathy training and some cognitive perceptual skills. But to simplify it, it's like, just slow down and try to keep your ground as a therapist, because therapy is or trauma is very intense, and it can pull us off our feet or off our ground. So stay grounded. And first responders just naturally know how to do this,
Mm.
like people working with fires or disaster. They often are maintain their ground really well, right? With horrible stuff. So it's not
Mm.
just us therapists that have like the edge on or the what is it called? Cornered the market on presence or something.
Yeah.
Like insofar as the intensities of trauma goes, you just got to stay grounded. You just
Mm.
got to feel your feet on the ground. You need to look around. Trauma can pull you in when a person is in that state. So you got to stay grounded, keep it slow. But then the skill set of actually doing the thing is, getting into the scene can get quite complex, which
Mm.
would take a couple of episodes to address.
Okay, got it. And then gradually allowing the person to become, if not comfortable, but to accept and integrate that experience and then let go of it. So it's not repetitive and it's no longer stored in the body.
That's a good way of summarizing it. We got
Okay.
to figure out what has been, because the animal body, the primary instincts are trying to protest in a very specific way. They want to protest in a very specific way. Whereas mammals were biting animals. So a lot of times we actually want to bite an abuser. Our nervous system or our animal body does. Like, I want to bite you. But it's
Mm.
so deeply repressed for so many, hundreds and thousands of years, thousands of years, that
Hmm.
we don't even think that that could be a possibility anymore.
Yeah.
We educate our children to not bite from a really young age. And I'm not saying I want my 4-year-old to go biting people because I don't want her to live in society. Like,
Mm.
we still got to educate, but there's still this layer that wants to do things like that. So,
Mm.
but they don't have an opportunity to do that. So a big part of trauma resolution is figuring out what wanted to express but didn't have the opportunity to because of all of the suppression and repression and stuff. So, this person wants to run and they can't because they're pinned down. Or, this person wants to bite and they can't because they have a whole history of thousands of years of humans saying that, we're beyond being animal. We don't bite or whatever, even though all of our children bite. It's like, what?
Mm.
That's schizophrenic. We're
Mm.
biting mammals. Like,
Yeah.
you know. And this person wanted to hit and couldn't. Or this person wanted to do the shaking response and they couldn't. Okay, so I call it the release of the thwarted impulse. It's essential to trauma resolution. So you nailed it there.
Excellent. What is expressive arts therapy?
Yeah, it's just creativity in motion. Therapy can become really humorless. And it actually ends up becoming more descriptive, even though we say a lot of stuff in therapy. I'm talking about classical talk therapy. You know, a lot of stuff is said, but it's it's kind of like talking about stuff. So there's a distance baked into it. It's talking about my relationship, talking about my family of origin, talking about my culture of origin and how it shaped me and stuff like that. So there
Mm.
can be a distance baked into it. And it's more about describing stuff, talking about stuff than it is expressing what's happening as a result of all this stuff. You know what I mean? So expressive arts does that. It very much makes a space for, okay, folks, description has major limitations. You know, another way of saying it is that there's an element of expression underneath everything that we say anyways. I mean, most of language is nonverbal. The tone of my voice, how I gesture, and like how you're nodding, and so a lot of communication is expressive anyways, but we hang so much on content. But
Yes.
most of what's being communicated is in the expressive domain that is actually underneath language. So gesture, underneath content, I should have said. The content of what we said is gesture, tone of voice. And so, expressive arts really makes a space for that and tries to really celebrate and nurture creativity. Okay, like, all right, folks, let's get together and we're going to compose a piece. And it's not like theater in the sense of, okay, now you got to memorize your lines and you got a right way and a wrong way to do it. That's just more structure, which is cool for a lot of artists, but that's not therapeutic arts.
Mm.
It needs
Mm.
therapeutic expressive arts needs some structure. But really what we want to do is we want to give a person a chance to be spontaneous again, to
Yeah.
not overthink things and try to get it right all the time. Because we're just constantly put upon with these ways of and these frameworks to get it right or get it
Mhm.
wrong. And usually it's wrong, right?
Mm.
Usually,
Mm.
like, so expressive arts is a place to just have the body express um, you know, its creative urges, like, so what could it be? We could do a little bit of drama and, hey, let's take a family system, somebody that's been really wounded by their family system, and let's do a little bit of a scene from this family's life. And so the person that's been wounded, I would be, working with that person to bring their story into the group in such a way that we can work with it as a group. And it actually becomes quite deep and wonderful. It's like a play in some ways, but it doesn't feel like it's like we're performing or something. It's not
Mm.
like that. It's like, no, no, no. We're just trying to figure out a way to come out of description, and no, let's try to express what's actually happening in this family. Okay, this, Mom is resentful because this thing happened, and she wants to kill herself, whatever it is. And so she's in the corner, like this, you know, and it ends up just being very visceral. There's all sorts of methods to do expressive arts, working with poetry and the classical mediums like dance and
Mm,
things like that. I use pretty much I use what I can get. It's like if a person likes poetry, okay, we're doing poetry. If a person
mhm.
likes sculpture, boom, let's do sculpture. Okay? If a person likes, painting, let's use painting in the therapy to augment the therapy. It's like it's an integrated, interdisciplinary approach.
For me personally, I find dance and I used to love going and dancing in clubs to dance music and stuff like that. Not so much anymore these days, but just putting on some good music and just moving the body freely, it feels so good. And we often don't create space for that. Like, you might go to the gym, it's all serious workout, you're moving the body, but because you want to achieve some kind of stereotypical look or whatever it is that you're after, or you
Yeah.
go for a run, and people it's funny, I watch people running and they've got such serious looks on their faces. It's like, I'm running, this is very good for
Yeah.
me. It's like, rather have fun. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I go up Mount Maunganui, which is a little mountain where I live, I imagine that I'm being chased by a wild animal, and I run really fast for a while and sit down and relax a little bit and then run, and try not to alarm other people by hiding in the bushes or something like that. But you make it fun, and the exercise experience is completely transformed.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. That bringing the imagination in. It's all about the
Mm,
imagination.
mm,
And it's like there's so many movements. So, I mean, I don't know if you have this movement in Australia, but in America, there's this movement called adulting, this
mm,
word called adulting. Yeah, and which is basically this idea is that the gold standard for psychological development is to become an adult. Fuck
mm.
that. Who wants to live like that?
Yeah.
The gold standard should be an integrated human being that can play like a child, and if we're going to say adult, fine, but that would mean a lot of multiplicity and a capacity to imagine things like what you just described,
Yeah.
where life isn't just constantly rule production and following, which is what adults can do. They just become the rule
Hmm.
creators and enforcers, and it's like, and well, children do that too, right? If you see a
Yeah.
children in a game, but the thing is that they just make it up.
Yeah.
you know
Mm,
and sometimes you have the kids that are like they're the enforcers, and they end up not being fun because they're trying to constantly bring everything to structure. But if it's really going well for the child group, they just make up the rules,
mm.
and then they just play with those rules for a while, and then they get bored of them, and then they create a game with new rules. So, okay, let's go for a run, Brad. Let's go, let's go on a New Zealand Great Walk. I love my New Zealand Great Walks. Gosh, I love those. They're
Mhm.
some of the happiest, most wonderful times in my life. Um, hey, let's, to going to the next dock hut. How about, how about you're I don't know, you're a unicorn or something like that. I have a 4-year-old, so I'm in the world of unicorns.
Yeah.
You're unicorn, and I'm a rabbit, or we could just make up rules, I mean,
Mm,
it's like, I chase you for the next 100 yards, and then you chase me. And how about next time you're an eagle and I'm a little tiny human being, right? And, and it could just be it's endless energy. Whenever you have access to the imagination, it can be an incredible reservoir
mm.
of just potency. I'm
Yeah.
fired up just talking about it. We haven't even
Ah,
done it.
I love it. I love it. I agree with you wholeheartedly about that adulting. Like, the gold standard is to be a logical, rational, almost machine-like person who's consistent and reliable and solves problems and tries to influence others, as we said at the very beginning with your beliefs.
Yeah.
Is that really what it's all about? I don't think so. We need to go back to being playful, having fun, and just enjoying this glimpse of an experience that we all have.
Yeah, well said.
Tell me about your book, Visionary Somatics.
Yeah, so yesterday I wrote the last lines. Um,
Congratulations.
I have some polishing to do. It's due in a month, so I have some polishing of the manuscript to do, but it is quite a beast. It goes into heavy neuroscience, neuroscience of trauma resolution and practice. It goes into the expressive arts, and the importance of expression. It talks about the history of somatic psychology. And then it goes deep into what I call embodied philosophy. Okay, embodied philosophy. So we're not talking about an armchair philosopher that just talks about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but a philosopher who's inhabiting his guts or her guts or their guts, and life is shaping them deeply, and they know that there's no way out of the in. You know what I mean? We're all in it. And so, there's a particular philosopher that I really love a lot that I talk about. So I talk about all sorts of things, and really what it is, Visionary Somatics, is it's me orienting people to, manifesting what I call the glorious body, coming out of the docile body and moving to the glorious body. That's like the thing I like to play with in the book is how society makes us docile. Okay, makes us rigid and makes us, limited in our range of expression. And what is a glorious body? Well, it takes two people that are curious, two or more people to get really curious about what a
Mm.
glorious body is. And rather than having an answer about it, I ask a lot of questions in the book. And the book is also a framework for a curriculum for training somatic students and what I call social artists. So people that are out there facilitating group spaces and doing somatic work with people. There's a framework in the book basically a curriculum for practitioner training for doing both individual work, trauma resolution, somatic psychology, and also group facilitation.
Excellent. Dr. Brian, I think we should do a round two at some point because this has been so much fun. It's one of my favorite interviews already. If people want to follow you in the meanwhile, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, so my brand is the Somatic Doctor. So Instagram is hashtag the Somatic Doctor. My website is somaticdoctor.com. Okay. And so check out those, and that's how you can stay in touch and all that stuff. I do free 15-minute consultations if anybody wants wants me to riff a little bit about what might be happening in your body and your life and all of that. So you can sign up for that on the website.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Brian. Any final thoughts for those who stuck with us all the way to the end?
Nope. Thank you. Go play. Go have fun. Be transgressive. Transgressive is just people end up often liking and appreciating the courage it takes to transgress norms in a sensitive way. I mean, not be impulsive and be a
Mm,
jerk, not that. But
mm,
people end up really appreciating the courage that it takes to transgress, and it's like, yeah, we can have a little bit more life here. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
I love that. Thanks, Dr. Brian.
Yeah.
And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Brad.